The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Hello and welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. This is a Hoop Ball presentation. My name is Adrian Benjamins and I'm joined by Dan Besbris. Dan, how are you?
I put you on the spot with that one, didn't I?
I'm kind of nervous introducing the show with the master of introductions.
The master of introductions. Half of my shows are me going. My intros are like, welcome to fantasy, huh?
You know what I love about your intros?
That they're really irreverent.
No. They're so effortless and they're so nonchalant.
That's true. They are nonchalant.
I love that because, when I used to do that rinky-dink podcast in my garage, I used to not even have an opening because I hated that very formal opening. Yeah, and I love that. It never feels like that with you.
Well, it is never that. I will never do a formal opening. If anybody knows anything about me, all my openings are me complaining about digestive issues and whatnot. But I do find it hard. I don't have, some of that is my own issue and how I've figured out how to deal with it best, where when I'm doing a podcast, and generally, by the way, right now, Adrian and I are actually recording in the evening, Monday night for the Tuesday show. Most of the time when I'm doing it solo, I just go morning of. So I'll wake up with the kid usually at 7. Nannies come around 9 most days. So I'm kind of warmed up, but not really. My brain hasn't really turned on yet. So it's pretty difficult for me to launch right into the, broadcaster voice, which is like, hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. I don't have that kind of pep first thing in the morning, so it's easier for me to ease into it with, all right, basketball's over. Let's see what we got going on, and then I'll pick up energy from there. I've listened back to my own shows. My energy level goes through the roof at the 8-minute mark. That's when I wake up every day. Well, from a listener standpoint, this is how I picture it, Dan. I picture you rolling out of bed. Please stop picturing me rolling out of bed.
You put your morning robe on. You got your cup of coffee. You have your morning cigarette. You fire up that mic and you just start spitballing in it. That's how I picture it. That's how smooth and how effortless it sounds when I hear it. When you put me on the spot right now, I'm like, oh, man, I just can't compete with that.
Well, you just got to go leisure suit, which is basically what you just described for me, like Hugh Hefner doing a podcast. May he rest in peace. Yeah, no cigarettes. Coming from a long line of Jewish doctors, you're not going to get away with that. There was, college time and a place for whatever I was going to do, and then now I'm an adult, man. So are you. We just have a bunch of adults over here at Hoop Ball. We're boring. Nobody does anything fun. Well, thank you for that. I love to not do openings, and I just wanted to. We do this thing on Google Hangouts, so I got to look at Adrian's eyes as he was thinking, "Oh my God, what am I going to do here? What are we talking about today, man? What are we talking about? What's our stuff?"
So I'm really glad that you asked that because you gave me a list of teams, and there were 2 teams I wanted to stay away from, and one of them was the Cleveland Cavaliers. I feel like we've been talking about the Cavs, Dan, for 2 months straight. I'm tired of talking about the Cavs.
I'll knock that one out solo. I'll do that one myself later this week. I got thoughts.
But you know what, though? There definitely is not a lack of stuff to talk about when it comes to the Cavs.
Yeah, they may end up being one of my favorite fantasy teams next year if LeBron is gone.
Yeah. Wait, real quickly, what do you think about that? Do you think he's gone?
He's gone. He's gone.
Did you hear this report today? Gary Payton said that his son has enrolled in a school in the LA area.
Absolutely. Yeah. He was out. Yeah. He was in LA checking out schools 5 or 6 months ago, I think. This was during the season. Might have been the All-Star break, if I'm not mistaken, because I think we talked about it briefly on one of our Lakers pods, and my friends and I, my guys that do the Lakers podcast, we are products of the Los Angeles private school system. We are those kids. We are the overprivileged of Los Angeles. So, hey, Bron, if you're listening to this podcast, let us know what you're thinking. We know all the little private school hotspots around LA. So give me a holler. I don't know, man. I'd be thrilled if he came to LA. I think he's going to Philly, personally. I feel like that's the fit. The Eastern Conference is just an auto bid right into the finals for him. The more that I watched the playoffs, and then we can get back into the actual topic of today, but the more I watched the playoffs, the more I realized how important it really is for him to be in the Eastern Conference, because the toll that his body took in the Eastern Conference playoffs was ridiculous. Can you even imagine the kind of pummeling that dude would have taken if he had to go through, what would they have been? They had 50 wins this year, I think, so they would have been the 3 seed out west, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4 seed. Mm-hmm. So if they're dealing with like the Pelicans, followed by the Warriors, followed by the Rockets, just to get to the finals, that would have been the path? No. Am I doing this right? I think basically it would have been the 6 seed, then the 2 seed, then the 1 seed if they wanted to get out of the Western Conference. That would be a ridiculous order.
This year, physically, seemed absolutely brutal for LeBron. Did not miss a single game during the regular season, and I can't remember him ever having a season where he doesn't at least rest one game. And then in the playoffs, how many times did he play almost the entire game, maybe resting only a minute or two? So you have to think that physically this year was a monster toll on him.
Yeah,
but
crazy.
Dan, if he joined a team like the Houston Rockets, wouldn't you kind of agree that he could kind of take nights off? He doesn't need to handle the ball as much when you got Harden and Chris Paul. Defensively, that team has got more pieces with like Capella and Trevor Ariza. So I feel like if he joined a team like that, he wouldn't need to do as much. It could kind of help him rest a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. But, oh man, that Eastern Conference, if he goes to a team like the 76ers, they're a pretty easy, I would say, 2 seed, even if he takes part of the season off. They could easily end up with the 1 seed if they all play their tails off all season long. And then you're talking about, like the teams you'd have to go through out east, the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference next year, who's that going to be? That's going to be somebody that's not particularly impressive. And then you handle the winner of the 4-5 set. That's probably going to be like the Pacers and the Bucks, maybe. That's a big difference if you want to say first round Wizards, second round Bucks, as opposed to in the Western Conference where you're talking about like Pelicans, Warriors in the first 2 rounds. That's like, I don't know. Maybe it's the Rockets too. The fit there, which I realize is sort of a dumb thing to talk about, but we already talked about how weird the fit was going to be with Chris Paul, and it was actually relatively weird, and they did a nice job of staggering those guys. So one of them was always on the floor. They made sure that when one guy was getting his, 15, 16 minutes of rest or whatever, the other dude was definitely out there, so they didn't sort of cross streams as often as they might. And then, of course, Chris Paul missed almost 30 games this year. I don't know. LeBron and James Harden and Chris Paul all side by side. To me, it felt like the Rockets were basically there. If they had kept their health in the playoffs, that's a team that really, they were up on the Warriors 3-2. Let's not forget, they basically had it. So I don't know that LeBron is the perfect fit for them. If I'm the Rockets, I go after a guy like Paul George instead, someone who can play off ball, who's longer, who's younger, who's a better 3-point shooter. That's my target if I'm Houston. And for LeBron, going to Philadelphia, that's a great fit alongside a transcendent center, a guy that's sort of built in his own mold that he can help mentor in Ben Simmons. You've got, J.J. Redick, I believe his contract comes off the books, but he'll probably come back if Bron goes there. They've got all these shooters around him, and then, you got your Eastern Conference cakewalk on top of everything else. Maybe he'll surprise us. I've said this already. Boy, we're way off topic. Do you want to just do the Cavs today instead?
Maybe we should. We're already talking about the Cavs. Let's do it.
Adrian and I, by the way, had prepped to talk about the Bucks today, but I don't think we're gonna have to save that one because we're in it now, man. I blame you for this one. I leave Adrian in charge.
It's my fault. It's my fault.
The frickin' hen house. As a Laker fan, but a pragmatic Laker fan. I think people know that about me. I'm a pragmatic Laker fan. I don't get all up in arms about things. I kind of like the fact that they've become sort of the third destination right now, if only because it means the Lakers are finally doing some stuff in secret, right? Like the rumors, they're always misdirection at this time of year. Stephen A. Smith came out and said there were 7 teams that LeBron was looking at. I think we all know there aren't really 7 teams. It's the Cavs, the Lakers, the Rockets, and the Sixers. He's not going to the Celtics. He's not going to the Warriors. Just stop it. It's just a way for people to be talking about more teams. I don't know. I think there is a decent chance he ends up in LA because he keeps talking about how family's going to be a big deal. And then he talks about that postseason presser wanting to play with really cerebral guys. So that makes you think Chris Paul. But Chris Paul is a free agent. I mean, he could very easily sign in LA and bring Chris Paul or Paul George or whoever with him. This is LeBron we're talking about. I don't know.
Yeah. And the Lakers have enough cap space to add a couple guys. So it is really interesting to think that he could team up with a guy like Paul George, who, by the way, I didn't think Paul George can play off the ball. And he taught me this season that he definitely can play off the ball. Playing with Russell Westbrook, he looked great as a second option. So it is really interesting to think that he can join Paul George. And the Lakers have an interesting supporting cast, guys like Ingram, Kuzma, Lonzo Ball. So as you mentioned, though, that West is just so stacked. To me, it feels like if he were a team to win right away, the Rockets, he can just walk on that team. I don't know salary-wise what they would need to do to make that work, but as far as just winning, it seems like, as you mentioned, they were right there. I mean, they almost beat the Warriors. If they had a healthy Chris Paul for those final 2 games, they may have beaten the Warriors. So it seems like if LeBron walked onto that team, they would be a lock to make the finals. And then I do agree with you that Philly, LeBron's got such a versatile game. He can pretty much step onto any team and fit. He can play in the front court. He can handle the ball. He can play anywhere. So, but I do agree with you that Philly has a very interesting cast with Embiid and Simmons. And as you mentioned, they got some great shooters. It seems like LeBron would just another team he can just walk onto and fit really well. So, yeah, man, I think those are the 3 teams right there.
Yeah, and then I guess staying put is the other possibility, but it doesn't seem
way.
Doesn't seem like it doesn't seem likely. So I'm looking at Houston's contract situation right now, just for whatever it's worth. They owe James Harden $30 million this coming year, which actually by all accounts is not that crazy as a salary. Ryan Anderson is set to make $20 million this coming season. Eric Gordon, $13 and PJ Tucker, $8. Chris Paul off the books now. His $25 million contract expired at the end of this last year. Trevor Ariza was making only $7 million this last season, by the way. He is now a free agent. Clint Capella is a restricted free agent, so that dude is going to draw a sizable increase in salary. I honestly don't know. I don't know enough about how the salary cap works to tell you what's actually going to happen. But if we just assume that Clint Capella they do match some sort of, I don't know, $15 million offer or whatever, that brings him to about $94 million of salary without Trevor Ariza. So I assume the way that they get to the right number is by getting rid of Ryan Anderson and then re-signing 2 superstars at discounts, right? They can't offer 2 guys $30 million apiece. That would put them at close to $140 million without Clint Capella, and then they go way over the salary cap with him. So I don't know how that works. I don't know if, obviously they have to take back some salary if they trade Ryan Anderson. I again, this is stuff that's a little bit over my head, but everybody's talking about it like it can happen. So presumably, it would be something like the Miami situation where everybody takes like a third of a salary pay cut. I don't know. I mean, does LeBron need? Does it make that big of a? I know this is a stupid thing to say, but like, what's the difference to LeBron between $25 and $30 million when he's making probably 5 to 10 times that in other projects, endorsement deals, global stuff? That's kind of small change to a guy like LeBron James. So I don't know. I think he's going to end up in Philadelphia. I'd be pretty excited if he ended up in LA because that would mean that probably somebody else is coming with him. By the way, in terms of season win total stuff, just while we're talking about the Cavaliers, they were an under. The line was 53.5. They got to 50, which I actually thought was kind of impressive given the fact that supporting cast was terrible and then Kevin Love missed significant time. If he doesn't get hurt, they probably hit the over on this one, but they didn't get there. Isaiah Thomas's health never really came around. They traded him. They got all these pieces back at the trade deadline, so then there was that adjustment period. So they were an under this year. That was actually one that I missed. I thought they'd hit that mark, and they needed more health and they needed more help to get to that point. The loss of Kyrie Irving and then IT not being right sort of sealed the deal. But from a fantasy perspective, Adrian, this was a little ugly, right? Is there a kinder way to put it? LeBron and Kevin Love each had really, really good seasons when they were on the floor, but the rest of the situation wasn't particularly great. Doesn't sort of really matter who they brought in.
Yeah, I agree. And I was lucky enough not to own any Cleveland Cavaliers, although LeBron James had an amazing season, a career year. And as you mentioned, Kevin Love was a strong option. But other than that, man, it's just, there's just not really a reliable option on this team. George Hill, Jordan Clarkson, J.R. Smith, Rodney Hood, they're all just really unreliable, very inconsistent. And we don't know what's going to happen in this offseason. As you mentioned at the beginning of the show, if LeBron leaves, that's going to open up a giant hole on this team as far as usage goes. So I don't know, man. I don't know what to think of this team. One thing that did come to mind watching that final game 4 in that final was, man, it was ugly, man. LeBron had just no help. J.R. Smith just gave them nothing. It was like they just, other than Kevin Love, they could not get anything out of anybody else on this team. And it's just not pretty, Dan.
Yeah, and I love it.
To say here.
I love it. That's where I was going with that. I love it. By the way, at Dan Besbris, at Adrian Benjamins, at Hoopball Fantasy, if you want to follow any of us on Twitter. I love it because neither one of us thinks LeBron is staying. I don't think many people do expect him to stay. By the way, Bron ended up as the number 6 fantasy player on a per-game basis in a 9-category format, but playing in all 82 games obviously helped him in totals. Kevin Love, number 29 on a per-game basis, but he missed 23 ball games this year. Larry Nance Jr., the only other player on the Cavs that finished inside the top 100, and he was only there for part of the season, during which he was slightly worse than that. But, I mean, you said it. The key point here, a bunch of overpaid dudes that gave LeBron nothing. George Hill, set to make $19 million next year. Tristan Thompson, set to make $17.5 million next year. J.R. Smith, $15 million. Jordan Clarkson, $12.5 million. Kyle Korver, who actually had played relatively well, he's on a $7.5 million deal for next year. Even if you take LeBron James out of the equation for this coming season, the Cavs are still over $100 million in payroll with all of these goofs on the team. But the beauty of it is LeBron took 19 shots per game this year and 6.5 free throws and averaged 9 rebounds and 9 assists. If he's not there, this is going to be like Kevin Love Minnesota years all over again. I mean, he was a top 5 fantasy player back in his heyday when he had no one around him. I love middling players on awful teams, and Kevin Love is a good player who could end up on a truly awful team. Kevin Love would be awesome in that setting. George Hill would have to be decent. I think you'd see probably some Jeff Green next year. I mean, there's all these guys that no one wants to touch with a 20-foot pole because of how awful they've been for stretches and how injury-prone for Kevin Love, and they could end up being incredible steals in the draft next year. I am salivating at the notion that LeBron leaves Cleveland. I could end up with a team with 4 Cavaliers on it next season. Easy.
Wow. Well,
yeah.
When you put it like that makes a lot of sense. I do agree with you, man. I miss that Minnesota Wolves Kevin Love. What a monster he was. And you'd have to think with LeBron gone, Kevin Love his value would shoot through the roof. And yeah, I would think that a guy like George Hill would put up some solid value as the main ball handler on this team. So let's see what happens in the offseason. There's some rumors that Cleveland could make Kevin Love available in a trade. They also have I believe it's the number 8 or 9 pick in this upcoming draft. So I'm not sure. They could be looking to move that as well. And as you mentioned, man, all these guys make so much money that guys like Tristan Thompson and J.R. Smith, like how could they move a guy that makes as much as these guys with the quality that they've shown on the court? So it's just a real interesting situation, man. I don't know what's going to happen in this offseason. This is going to be crazy, Dan.
Let me run some numbers by you real quick. And let's say Kevin Love isn't moved in this offseason and LeBron James does leave town. Do you remember some of the numbers that Love put up during his last 2 or 3 years in Minnesota? I think they'll blow your mind. I have them pulled up now.
So I don't know the exact numbers, but I remember he was double monster with threes. And I remember he was having like 20-20 type games where he had like 20 points, 20 rebounds with threes. So I don't know the numbers he averaged, but I just remember he was a monster.
Yep. Your memory, I think, is probably better than most. The fact that you remember some of those numbers is, I think, a good illustration. 2010, 2011, his third year in the NBA, he averaged 20 and 15 for the year. 20 and 15 with... Jeez. Yeah, this is sort of before three-pointers became massive. He hit 1.2 threes per game that year, shot 85% high-volume free throw stuff. Never been a big-time defensive guy. The following year, 2011, 2012, 26 and 13 with a steal and 2 three-pointers per game. The 2012 season was the one where he missed almost the entire year. Final year in Minnesota, 2013, 2014, Kevin Love averaged 26 points, 12.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 0.8 steals, half a block, 2.5 three-pointers, and 82% high-volume free throw shooting. He was a top 10 guy that last year, and boy, did his role get diminished in Cleveland. He dropped from 26 points to 16. Very few times have guys taken that kind of hit when joining the... if you want to call it like a big three with LeBron and Kyrie Irving, but that's still in there, folks. For anybody trying to remember what Kevin Love used to do, he's not 30 years old yet. He's only 29 still.
Dan, are you at all concerned with Kevin Love's health?
Yes.
He's experienced multiple hand injuries. He seems to always kind of get knocked up here and there.
He's pregnant?
That kind of I kind of lower his value a little bit on draft day because of his injury proneness.
Yeah, he's never going to give you a full season. He's only his rookie year. He played 81 games. He was not a starter, so the minute toll wasn't quite there. The good years for Kevin Love have been 75 to 77, and the bad years have generally been like the 55 to 65 range. So there is a big drop off there. But boy, I mean, if LeBron's leaving. And this guy could give you top 10 value on a per-game basis, even if he misses 15 games. That would still... I think if he played 67 games at a top 10 clip, and there's probably someone we could compare him to this year, like a Chris Paul, I think that still puts him inside the top 25 for totals just because of how powerful those first-round numbers can be. So I don't know. My thought is that there's almost no amount that you could put on LeBron James leaving Cleveland. All of these guys would get such a huge bump that to me, they'd basically all be worth kind of an exploratory draft pick. Barring, of course, having to go get Kevin Love at like number 15. That's too early to draft somebody who you know is going to miss 10 to 15 games. I mean, as far as this season goes, Adrian, we haven't really talked about it much, but that's because it was generally a massive disappointment, right?
As far as the Cavs go, is that what you mean?
Yeah, just fantasy-wise. Was anybody else worth noting?
No. I'm trying to think if even in my deeper leagues, like I'm trying to think deep league here. No, man, it was just ugly. There was really nobody. At the very beginning of the season, I saw a lot of people taking a shot on Tristan Thompson as like a last round type guy. Like maybe he can be a low end double type guy, but he just fell off a cliff this year. And Kyle Korver really faded this year. He seemed like a shell of himself. There's just not much to talk about here other than LeBron and Kevin Love.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Can't make something out of nothing. All right, well, let's play a little game then. Let's play the would he or wouldn't he? Would either of us put this dude on our team if LeBron is gone? Because I still think there's going to be a cutoff somewhere. I'm just going to list a name, and then you and I can decide whether or not they're worth drafting next year. And we'll just go through some of these, maybe the top 7 or 8 guys on this team. Kevin Love, I mean, that's a pretty obvious yes for both of us, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Larry Nance Jr. I'm probably not drafting Larry Nance if LeBron leaves town. What do you think?
Okay, so I'll tell you what. If LeBron leaves town, if Kevin Love is the starting center, and I don't think he would be, he kind of prefers to more play that power forward spot. But if Larry Nance was like a starting power forward next to Kevin Love, I think I would take a shot on Larry Nance. I'm talking about like end of your draft or just on my watch list as soon as the season started. I think he could be worth owning if he got starters minutes in that front court.
So my fear is that, or I always thought Larry Nance, his most important attribute was being able to sort of give that big energy stuff, and if someone could get him an open look, take advantage of it. My concern is that there isn't going to be anyone to get him an open look if LeBron is gone. But you might be right in that maybe the quality of basketball on that team just gets so ugly that it's like, oh, hey, it's loose balls every 4 possessions. This is where Larry Nance, he's diving on the floor, he's hurting himself, but he's coming up with 2 to 3 steals a night. I don't know. I just feel like the upside is pretty limited for him if Kevin Love is the focal point of the offense. So he's a guy to me that I'm less excited about. And mostly I said no because I felt like I had to say no to somebody. Someone's got to be on the outside looking in, and he can't stay healthy when he plays more than 24 minutes a game. So that's my fear with that one. Rodney Hood, by the way, who I believe is a restricted free agent. Let's say he does come back to the Cavaliers, which I realize doesn't make a ton of sense, but just for this hypothetical, let's say Rodney Hood does come back to Cleveland. I think I do give him a look, like around 110, 115, but no earlier than that.
I would agree with that. I was going to say, I believe Rodney Hood could be worth drafting. We've seen it in Utah. He can score and, very injury prone. So I like that you wouldn't take a look at him until that 115 range. But we know he can score. He can hit threes. He's gone through stretches of putting up some pretty decent value in the right setting. And so with no LeBron James there, he can kind of this team would definitely need some scoring. He can kind of fill that need on the wing. I think I agree with that. Yeah.
Next guy on the list is George Hill. Yeah, I'd take a flyer on him.
Yep. Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Maybe even like 7th round. Maybe that. I mean, if he's the primary starting point guard on this team, I mean, with no LeBron, this team would really. I mean, he would really be running this offense.
Here's your amusing stat for the podcast. George Hill was second on the Cavaliers in assists in a total overall this year, not necessarily just in his time with Cleveland. He averaged 2.8 assists per game this season, and that would be the second most of anybody on the Cavaliers behind LeBron, who had 9.1. So, yeah, you're right. Nobody else did anything from a ball handling standpoint, so there would just have to be someone, and he's kind of the only guy. So, yeah, I think you let him fall as far as possible. He's another guy that has dealt with injury stuff for a couple of years in a row now. But he could easily be a top 75 guy, and if you can steal him a little later than that, then by all means. Here's an interesting one. Mr. Potential, who's just been, everybody thought he was going to be something, and he just didn't turn out to be, and that's Jeff Green. I honestly, this is my the point at the top of the roof for me, where I'm sitting like an egg, and the wind could blow me either direction. They're going to need somebody to step in and just play a ton of minutes. And Jeff Green is one of their very few mildly athletic wing guys. I think I might consider taking him as my very last pick in the draft, just to see if he can play 34 minutes and have this weird, like, Marvin Williams style coming out party in his late career.
I don't trust Jeff Green.
Yeah, you're probably
I can't
right.
do it. But let me tell you what would happen. Jeff Green would have 3 straight games of like 20 points. Look great. I would pick him up off the wire. I would play him, and then he would give a goose egg and give me nothing, and I would be pissed.
Yeah.
I just don't trust. I don't trust Jeff Green. I don't trust J.R. Smith.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
The hell with J.R. Smith. Tristan Thompson?
They'd have to show it to me. Tristan, you know what? Tristan Thompson could be interesting because, as I mentioned before, I don't think Kevin Love likes to play center. I think he'd want to play power forward. Tristan Thompson may be the starting center. He can give you a low-end double-double, 10 points, 10 rebounds. I could maybe take, like, my last pick type flyer on Tristan Thompson with the notion that, hey, if the first 3 games he does nothing, I'm dropping this guy for the first hot free agent.
Yeah, I think I'm out on Tristan Thompson. That dude shoots free throws like I do. Jordan Clarkson, I am a no on Jordan Clarkson. I've watched him long enough on the Lakers to know that it's just not there. It's just not there.
Yeah.
If Kevin Love gets moved, then I'm in on Jordan Clarkson, because then they're going to just need him to go, full Monte Ellis, and that's a different fantasy beast. But as long as Kevin Love is there, Jordan Clarkson's only value is if he's getting 15, 16 shots a game, and I don't think that's there.
Yeah, I agree with you.
What about Kendrick Perkins? You going to pick up Kendrick Perkins?
You know what was weird is I saw him on the bench wearing a suit, and I thought to myself, is he a player on this team or is he a coach? What's going on here?
Yeah, I think we all had that thought. All right, I guess that's I think that's the best way to look at the Cavaliers is, I'm not going to throw Jose Calderon in the mix. I can't do that to you, Jose. Oh, hey, what about Kyle Korver? Boy, that's a big question mark, because he can do really interesting things, but without anybody to get him an open shot, I don't know that he can survive in the modern NBA. So I think I'm out on Korver.
I feel like Kyle Korver has just really faded. He just doesn't seem like the same player he was from 2 years ago. So,
well, he's an old man now, isn't he?
Yeah, I guess that's it. We've seen
he's older than us. He's one of the few guys in the NBA. He's older than me.
Yeah, it just he always seems to be in really good shape. We've seen some outside shooters prolong their career, guys like Ray Allen, and I kind of thought that he would still have it at this point of his career. But when it goes, it goes. Father Time is undefeated, right? Isn't that what they say?
That's right. Yeah, he's been in the NBA since 2003. I feel like that time goes fast. Kyle Korver was in the NBA when I was an undergrad in college. That's crazy. Goodness gracious. Yeah, he's 37.
Uh-huh. Wow. Well, yeah, I don't trust him. I won't touch him next year for fantasy.
My wife and I were playing a game of trying to figure out how many players in the NBA were older than me. This was the game we played on my 35th birthday 2 weeks ago. Kyle Korver. That was one I missed. I got to drop him onto the list now. Great.
And did you get Dirk Nowitzki?
Yeah, Dirk and Vince were sort of like that's like the middle square on the bingo chart. You get Dirk and Vince for free, and then you got to try to have all the other ones are the bingos. Oh, Kyle Korver, that's K37. Boy. All right, listen, here's what we want from our listeners on this one, because I know you guys are out there and we don't interact with you as much as we should. Tweet at us players over 35 years of age. Let's see if we can make an old NBA bingo card to celebrate my 35th birthday, which was back on June the 1st. That's our game for this show. We need you guys to contribute, though. So find me some players over 35 that are not Kyle Korver, not Dirk Nowitzki, and not Vince Carter. And I can tell you there aren't a ton of them, but there are a handful. So hunt them down. And in the words of the great, I forget what his character's name was in the movie, but we're all counting on you. There you go. Airplane reference here at the end of the podcast. So we didn't talk about the Bucks, though, Adrian, but that'll come up soon. What are you and Neil talking about tomorrow? Do you guys know yet?
I don't even know.
Yeah.
I'll touch bases with him later, but we'll cover the next team. If it's the Bucks, we'll hit up the Bucks maybe.
Well, you're welcome, Neil. We left the Bucks for you. Adrian and I took the Cavs today.
Hey, Neil's a Chicago guy. Isn't Chicago one of the teams?
That's true. We're in the Central.
So maybe we'll do Chicago. That'll be real interesting.
The Central Division, I always have trouble remembering all 5 teams in the Central Division. With apologies to the Northern Midwest, there's something about that area of the United States where I struggle to come up with all 5 of them every time. I don't know why. I like every other division, I can just rattle them off 1 through 5 easy. And then in the Central, it's this like, oh well, wait a minute now, is that team? Wait, no, is it? No, maybe. And then Southwest would be hard if not for the fact that almost all those teams are Texas. So then you really only have to remember a couple. But yeah, you guys have your pick of the litter, though. I did Indy on Monday's show, which I had to do because, come on, Thaddeus Young. How could I not talk about my guy Thad? So yeah, you got some choices. You got Bulls, you got Bucks, you got Pistons are all on the table for the rest of the week. So that's not bad. I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess that you're not gonna do the Pistons. Tell me I'm wrong.
You know what?
I'm going to get stuck with Pistons.
At the beginning of this show, I said there were 2 teams I didn't want to talk about. One was the Cleveland Cavs. The second were the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, they're clunker, man. I got tweeted at by someone over at ESPN today for a snide remark I made about their piece on Dwayne Casey, but they liked it. So who was that? And Antonietta Collins. Thanks, Antonietta.
Oh.
She does some ESPN stuff. I don't know specifically what it is, but they ran a story about why was Dwayne Casey excited about joining the Pistons, and I think I wrote something like, "Wait, is it that they gave him $35 million over 5 years?"
That might have something to do with it.
Yeah,
huh?
Is it Blake Griffin's $350 billion contract? Is it the fact that they owe Reggie Jackson half the franchise over the next 4 years? No, it's not those. Anyway, whatever. So I have a feeling I'm going to end up with Pistons by myself on Friday. I just know it. You guys are going to stick me with it. You lousy curs. I'll never forgive you for this. Adrian, you want to take us out?
Yes, Dan. Thank you so much. Thank you, listeners. If this is a hoop ball presentation, if we didn't say that already, hit us up on Twitter at Adrian Benjamins. At Dan Besbris. As Dan says, if you know our name, you know our Twitter handle. And thanks a lot, you guys.
Yeah, let's make that bingo card.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.